My goal is, after listening to this podcast, you'll be as excited about Mercury Retrograde as I am. Because you know what is coming. Because you know that this is a time to hit the pause button, look at everything, and even if you have some big projects planned, know that you might need some extra time around it. Some extra time to prepare, but also some extra time to integrate. This is a perfect time for you to sit back and allow to receive. Receive the messages, receive the support, receive the insights and inspiration that can come up during Mercury Retrograde. It's not something to fear. Welcome to the Astrology as a Strategy podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Banassi. I'm on a mission to help you amplify your influence so you can free up time to spend with your family while increasing your revenue. I'm an astrologer, business mentor, an adventure seeker, and a proud mama of 3 kids. Think of this podcast as your shortcut to more joy and ease in your business. Running a business is joyful, and when you're not having fun, you haven't cracked the code yet, but that's about to change. I share practical and short tools how to use astrology in your business and life. So let's get started on using your energy strategically to make a bigger impact, have more free time, and grow your wealth. Let's talk Mercury Retrograde and bust some myths, shall we? Besides new and full moons, I think Mercury Retrograde is talked about the most because people tend to sensationalize it and turn it into something based on fear instead of something that works in our benefit. But to start with the basics, what is Mercury? What is a Mercury Retrograde? And how can you use it in your benefit? One of the things I want to stress, and I've said it before, is that astrology always works out in your benefit. Let me repeat that. Astrology always works out in your benefit. And so does Mercury Retrograde. So to start with, what is Mercury? Mercury is the planet of communication. In ancient Greek mythology, Mercury is also the one who can travel between this world and the underworld. It's kind of the messenger god between two worlds. Mercury in our natal chart stands for the way that we communicate, the way that we connect, also the way that we have this inner dialogue with ourselves. When we look at transit Mercury that is moving in the sky right now, it tells us a lot about the way that we communicate, the way that we connect, but also it rules our technology and short-term travels. So when you want to know more about the style of communication, the style of expressing yourself, the way of connecting to others, if you look at what Mercury is doing right now, it can give you a lot of information already. But I'm not going to go into that today. Today, I really want to cover the retrograde. Retrograde is when a planet appears to be moving backwards from our perspective here on the Earth. In reality, a planet never moves backwards. A planet always continues to travel forward. In a retrograde, it appears to our perspective here on Earth that the planet moves backwards. Every time when a planet moves backwards, and all planets move backwards, they have a retrograde period besides the sun and the moon. These planets move backwards, and when that happens, the energy that it normally brings is turned inwards. So when it's direct, Mercury rules the way that we communicate and express outwards. When it turns retrograde, it does the opposite. It is the way that we reflect. It is the way that we slow down a bit too, because Mercury likes to go really fast. It likes to take in lots of different information. But when it turns retrograde, it does the opposite. We are invited to look inwards. This is exactly why there's so much fear and misunderstanding around Mercury retrograde. Now, what happens is in our society, we get applauded if we push hard, if we work hard, if it's a struggle. The struggle is celebrated. Hustle, like the hustle culture, is I just get so frustrated when I hear that, because we don't need to suffer. We don't need to struggle that hard in order to be successful. And Mercury retrograde is one of those things where we don't understand the value of a Mercury retrograde. And that's why I'm so passionate today to talk about this subject, because Mercury retrograde is such an amazing, really potent time to slow down. I know you maybe don't want to hear that. You may want to just focus on going and being productive. But Mercury retrograde offers us the ability to turn inwards, to reflect, to rest, to relax, to reevaluate, to reassess. Everything that has the word or the letters re in front of it is basically a good thing to do during a Mercury retrograde. A Mercury retrograde happens about 3 to 4 times a year and lasts between 2 to 3 weeks, depending exactly on where it's located. And this time is an invitation for you to slow down. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to drop everything, you cannot do anything, all the projects have to be paused. But what it does, it gives you the opportunity to kind of take like a bird's eye view, especially this year because we have all of our Mercury retrogrades in air signs. It gives us a bird's eye view of what worked well, what hasn't, and what is needed to course correct. Now, if we always keep going, we have no idea that maybe we are running a bit off course, and by the time we end up at our destination, we might be way off because the course corrections that we could have taken, we didn't. So now that we end up in the wrong place, it's almost impossible to go back. And this comes back to what I said, that we're so focused on being productive, on putting our self-worth on how much we produce. But just look at nature. Nature is not concerned with, like a flower is not concerned with blooming all the time. It has different cycles and seasons. And Mercury retrograde is like the winter season. It's a season to reflect, to look at what you have produced and how you can use that knowledge to then, when Mercury stations direct again, to use that in your advantage. We all need a time to reflect. Even though maybe for you it doesn't feel like you're being productive, it actually is extremely productive to rest and reflect. First and foremost, your body needs it. Your body needs to have a break. Secondly, if you never stop, then you don't know if things aren't working. If we just push through, if something feels contractive, but it's like we've been doing it like this for years, then we just keep doing it. Well, that might not be the best way. So when Mercury stations retrograde, allow yourself to take that time to pause. And it doesn't mean you don't work for those 2 to 3 weeks. It means that you hit the pause button, at least like maybe an afternoon. Sit down with your journal and write about the things that you have done over the past few months. It's really good to look back from the period from the previous Mercury retrograde up until this Mercury retrograde, to reflect on what is working for you. What are you extremely proud of? Because it's also about celebration. And then when you celebrate, when you can integrate that, that's when you can start moving forward in even bigger steps. We need a time for contemplation. We need a time to evaluate where we are. And it is really time we start to understand and value rest, that we should value to reflect and to review. Because every successful business knows the value of understanding and reflecting. We shouldn't be too afraid to stand still for a moment. And even if it's just for an afternoon, I usually prefer to take at least a day off, and that day focus on looking at my business, looking at my life, looking at how do I show up? How do I show up in my personal life? How do I show up in my business? How do I show up in my family? And be honest about that. Also, do I speak my truth? Remember, Mercury rules our communication. It rules our voice. How can I show up in a way that is really authentic with me? No judgment here. It's not a time to put a blame on it. This is simply to observe, hey, what is going on? What do I feel? What comes up for me? And how can I work through that? Now, as I mentioned, this year we have all of our Mercury retrogrades in air signs. And air signs are about our rational minds. It is about curiosity. It's about learning. It's about this forward motion. It's also sometimes a bit disconnected from the earth. It is disconnected from what we are truly feeling and experiencing because we try to rationalize our way out of it. Especially this year in 2021, focus on during the Mercury retrograde to ground down. Root down in your values, root down in what it is that is important to you. We don't have to rationalize our way out of everything. This is a beautiful time to set a balance between how much you use your rational mind, how much you use your intuition, how much do you use the wisdom of the earth, how much you use the wisdom of the things around you. Air signs love to learn, love to take in information, love to process information. Look at that. Look at the way that you do that. Look at the way you invite new things in. And don't be pragmatic about it. Keep an open mind. And these retrogrades this year in air signs is an opportunity for you to open your mind, to take a step back, to see how you can allow yourself to expand. In order to expand, we need to rest. So every Mercury retrograde is an invitation for you to slow down. And I know we don't like to hear that too much, but this is your permission slip, or actually, this is your task to slow down during this Mercury retrograde, to allow yourself to sit with what you are feeling, to sit with what is present for you. Because if we don't slow down, if we don't sit down and listen, we have no idea what is going on. And this comes back to the embodiment of astrology. Feel into it. And yes, Mercury retrogrades tend to upset our communication systems. It tend to, mess around with technology. All the more reason for you to be prepared for that and to schedule extra time. For instance, if you have a launch planned during Mercury retrograde, don't freak out, don't reschedule, unless you really feel called to reschedule. Don't reschedule. Make sure you have enough support around you. Make sure you are prepared for technical glitches or things to go wrong. Like my favorite example is when I moved from Thailand to the Netherlands, I flew with 2 young kids. I had 6 suitcases with me. The day that we traveled was the first day of Mercury retrograde. I didn't cancel my flight. I didn't move my flight. I wasn't freaking out. But what I did is I scheduled extra time around all of the layovers so that I would make sure that I would catch the next flight, because we had 2 layovers. I made sure that I was prepared, and I want you to do the same. I want you to, whenever a Mercury retrograde comes up, you go, yes, I got this. I'm excited. I have scheduled extra time. If you're traveling, make sure that you took some extra precautions to make sure that it can go as smooth as possible. But also prepare for some setbacks. Now, that doesn't mean that they will happen, but it allows your mind to expand and to allow all of the possibilities to be. My goal is, after listening to this podcast, you'll be as excited about Mercury retrograde as I am, because you know what is coming. Because you know that this is a time to hit the pause button, look at everything, and even if you have some big projects planned, know that you might need some extra time around it. Some extra time to prepare, but also some extra time to integrate. This is a perfect time for you to sit back and allow to receive. Receive the messages, receive the support, receive the insights and inspiration that can come up during Mercury retrograde. It's not something to fear. And this is the very masculine-based astrology. where as long as we fear it, we stay small. But this is your opportunity to step out of that, claim it, and say, yes, Mercury retrograde is coming up. I am excited about this. I'm looking forward to connecting deeply with myself, with my mission, to recalibrate, to review, to reset maybe even, and then go forward again. It is your opportunity to really step into the fullest version of yourself. And the only way you can do this, if you allow yourself to hit that reset button, to change your mind, because that's also what air signs do. They change their mind often. Allow yourself to change your mind. Nothing is set in stone. And you have the full capacity to change course if needed. You are the driver. You are the captain of your own ship. Steer it towards your goal and don't be afraid to course correct along the way. Now say this with me. I am excited about Mercury retrograde. I cannot wait. And I can't wait to hear your experience with Mercury retrograde. Please tag me on Instagram with the hashtag astrology as a strategy, because I love to hear what you're experiencing during Mercury retrograde, what you are looking forward to, or maybe some amazing stories that you can share with something that happened during a Mercury retrograde. Thank you so much for listening to the Astrology as a Strategy podcast again. I love to hear your insight from this episode. Screenshot and tag me on Instagram in your stories or on your feed. You will inspire others to have more joy and ease in their business, and I love to see who's listening. One last thing. I love creating free content for you. Would you like to do something in return? Go to iTunes, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps the podcast to be found more easily so this message can reach more people. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next time.